6th, 2026, 11:47 p.m., Sea of Azov. A Ukrainian drone operator sitting at a screen in an undisclosed location locks onto the first target, the tanker Captain Barman, a 140-meter vessel carrying 7,000 tons of fuel bound for occupied Crimea, sailing under opaque ownership and a foreign flag of convenience specifically designed to hide its role in Russia's war machine. The operator presses forward. The drone hits. The tanker catches fire. Before the sun rises on July 7th, the tanker Sonar 3 is also burning in the same waters, and that is just day one. What followed over the next 6 days was not a battle, it was a massacre. From July 6th through July 11th, 2026, Ukraine's 414th Separate Unmanned Strike Aviation System Brigade, known as Magyar's Birds, carried out an operation that struck 76 vessels in the Sea of Azov over 6 days, including 42 tankers of the Russian Shadow Fleet out of approximately 50 vessels targeted. On the night of July 11th alone, Ukrainian drones struck 21 tankers and 7 other vessels in the Sea of Azov, recording 73 successful strikes in a single overnight operation. Robert Magyar Brovdy, commander of Ukraine's Unmanned Systems Forces, posted 3 words on Telegram after the final night of strikes. 3 words that tell you everything about what just happened in those waters. Moscow will fall. This was not a naval operation. Ukraine has no navy. This was not a missile campaign. Ukraine did not fire a single conventional naval weapon. This was a fleet of drones, long-range aerial vehicles guided by satellite, flown by operators hundreds of miles away, systematically hunting and destroying the secret armada Russia built to keep its war funded. Russia relies on a vast shadow fleet of aging tankers operating under opaque ownership structures and flags of convenience to export oil and petroleum products despite Western sanctions. That fleet just lost 76 of its vessels in 6 days. In the Kerch Strait, the critical choke point between Russia and Crimea, through which every drop of fuel for the occupied peninsula must pass, has been effectively shut down. The Shadow Fleet is no longer sailing, it is burning. To understand why 76 burning tankers in the Sea of Azov is one of the most consequential stories of this entire war, you have to understand the Shadow Fleet itself, what it is, how it was built, and how much of Russia's ability to fight depends on it continuing to sail. When the West imposed sweeping sanctions on Russia following the February 2022 invasion, the central strategic objective was simple: cut off the revenue that funds the war. Russia's economy runs on oil. Before the invasion, roughly 60% of Russia's federal budget revenue derived from oil and gas exports. Cut the oil exports, cut the war budget, cut Putin's ability to buy weapons, pay soldiers, and absorb losses at the scale this war demands. The G7 oil price cap, imposed in December 2022, was the flagship instrument of that strategy, capping the price at which Russian oil could be sold and prohibiting Western shipping companies, insurers, and financial institutions from facilitating Russian oil trade above that cap. It was a sophisticated financial weapon, and Russia found a sophisticated workaround. The Shadow Fleet refers to a network of roughly 1,000 vessels used to transport Russian oil in violation of Western sanctions and the G7 oil price cap. These are aging tankers built between 2006 and 2012, most of them 140 meters long, carrying dead weight of around 7,000 tons, purchased through networks of shell companies registered in jurisdictions with minimal transparency requirements. They sail under flags of convenience, Panama, Gabon, Cameroon, Palau, that have nothing to do with their actual owners or operators. They are insured by non-Western entities or not insured at all. They load Russian crude at ports like Novorossiysk and Ust-Luga, sail through the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov, and deliver oil to buyers in India, China, Turkey, and elsewhere who are willing to purchase Russian crude at a discount, sanctions or no sanctions. Ukraine's general staff confirmed the vessels were used to supply fuel and lubricants to Russian military units and to transport oil and petroleum products in circumvention of international sanctions, describing them as facilitating the export of energy resources, one of the Kremlin's key sources of funding for its war against Ukraine. For 3 years, this fleet operated largely unmolested. Western governments tracked it, sanctioned individual vessels, pressured insurers and port operators, but could not physically stop it. The oil kept moving. The revenue kept flowing. The war kept going. Then Ukraine solved the problem the way it has solved every problem in this war, with a drone. In an interview with Reuters last month, Kyiv's top drone commander, Robert Brovdy, pledged to effectively cut off Crimea from Russia through a campaign of systematic strikes. He was not speaking metaphorically. Operation Crimean Switch, off the name Ukraine gave to its campaign of systematically destroying the energy and logistics infrastructure supplying occupied Crimea had no end date, and on the night of July 6th, it came for the Shadow Fleet. Night by night, vessel by vessel, this is how the Shadow Fleet massacre unfolded, and the precision and escalation of each night tells you this was not improvised. This was planned, rehearsed, and executed with a methodical ruthlessness that the Shadow Fleet's operators had no answer for. On the night of July 6th to 7th, pilots from the Kairos unit of Magyar's 414th Brigade hunted down
as it would
and
mean
hit
putting
8
US
tankers
troops
from
in the
Russia's
firing
Shadow
line
Fleet
directly,
in a single night.
which has the
The
potential to send
identified vessels
shockwaves through his
included
base of
Venera
support
3,
back home.
Zanar 1,
Still,
Zanar
it's an
17,
increasing possibility.
Clemena,
And if the US does
Alexei
send
Sabrasov,
soldiers
and
into
Penelopa,
Iran,
all
there are a
subject
few
to
obvious
international
targets it could aim
sanctions.
for.
Each
Taking
approximately
Karg Island along with
140
some
meters
other
long,
islands is the most
each
obvious
carrying
of
up to
these targets for the
7,000
reason we
tons of
mentioned
dead
earlier.
weight. The drone
Bloomberg
commander
adds that the
posted
US
the
may
vessel
want to
names
gain
publicly.
control over large
He
amounts
wanted
of
Russia
enriched
to know
uranium
exactly
that
what
are in
had been
Iran's
taken.
possession.
By the night
This
of
is the
July
type of
7th to
target
8th,
the US and
9
Israel
more
struck
tankers
during
were struck,
Operation
bringing the
Midnight Hammer back
72-hour
in June.
total to 21
And there is
Russian
evidence
vessels,
that B-2 bombers
including
launched
19
massive
Shadow
ordnance
Fleet tankers,
penetrators
1
at
cargo
more of
ship,
Iran's
and 1
underground
ferry in
facilities
Kerch.
during
On
Operation
July
Epic
9th,
Fury.
Magyar's Birds reported
However,
that
to prevent
35
Iran
tankers,
from using
cargo
these types
ships,
of
and
facilities
auxiliary vessels
altogether,
had been hit
troops would be
within the
needed on
past
the
96
ground
hours,
to take full
with 14
control, thus
vessels struck
preventing
in
a
a single
dirty bomb
overnight
scenario.
operation.
But there's
By
another
July 10th,
possibility.
Ukrainian
Bloomberg
drones had struck
explains.
10 more tankers,
The third
a
mission
cargo
will be
vessel,
partnering with
a
the
ferry,
Central Intelligence
and a sea
Agency
tug.
and Israel's
The drone
Mossad
commander called
to
it
send
the
small
Azov
teams
branch
into
of
Iran to
Chornobivka,
connect with
a
political
reference to the
opposition
Ukrainian
to
air
form a
base
true
where Russia
resistance movement,
repeatedly sent
the
its
outlet says.
helicopters throughout
And as
2022,
crazy as this idea
and
sounds,
Ukraine
it's also
repeatedly
one that seems to
destroyed them,
closely
in a
align
cycle
with
of
how the
destruction
US
that became a
envisions
symbol
regime
of
change
Russian
happening in
military
Iran.
incompetence.
In the wake
Now
of the
Russia
initial
was flying
strikes
its
against
tankers
Iran's
into the same
regime on
trap,
February 28,
night after
Trump
night,
even declared to
vessel
Iran's
after
people,
vessel.
when we are
On the night
finished,
of July
take over
10th
your
to
government.
11th,
It will be
Ukraine's
yours to
general
take,
staff confirmed
the New
hits
York
on
Times
21
reports.
Russian tankers,
And though
4
Trump has
tugboats,
backtracked
2
on
dry
those comments
cargo
a little
vessels, and a
since,
dredger in the
noting that
waters
it's a
of the
pretty
Sea of
big ask
Azov.
for the regular Iranian
Magyar
people to
updated
rise
his
up
count.
when there are still members of the
76 vessels
IRGC in the
struck over
streets
6
gunning down
days.
those who
The
protest Iran's
strategic
regime.
consequences
It still
cascaded
seems
immediately
clear
and
that the
visibly.
US envisions a
Russia
future where
suspended
it
new
serves in a
applications for
supporting
vessel
role for
transit
an
through the Kerch
anti-regime
Strait
movement
and
in
halted
Iran.
navigation on the
Could that
Don
be the
Azov
role that
Canal,
the 31st
a
Marine
navigable
Expeditionary
waterway
Unit
linking the
plays?
Don River with
There are
the
lots of
Sea of
risks
Azov.
involved with
The
this
Kerch
potential
Strait,
approach.
the narrow
Mossad
passage
and the
between
CIA
Russia
will
and
need to
Crimea,
already
through
have
which every
contacts on the
tanker
ground in
carrying
Iran,
fuel to the
along with
occupied
enough
peninsula
confidence in
must
these
pass,
contacts to
was
know that they'll
effectively
work to form an
closed.
anti-regime
Not by a
army
naval
that can operate
blockade,
with help from the
not
US.
by mines,
But in
by
this
the
scenario,
credible
the US may
certainty
use the
that any
31st
vessel
Marine
attempting the
Expeditionary
crossing
Unit
would
to
be
take key
destroyed
military
before
and
it
economic
arrived.
nodes
And
such as Karg Island,
simultaneously,
while
Ukraine
providing
continued
training
striking
and a
the
through
energy
line of weapons
infrastructure on
to a
Crimea
resistant movement
itself. Between
focused
July
on toppling
1st
the
and
Iranian
8th,
regime
the
on the
unmanned
mainland.
systems forces
Plenty
targeted
of
50
Iran's
energy
military
facilities in
firepower has been
occupied
ruined by
Crimea
the
and
US.
southern occupied
With
territories as
organization,
part of
money, and
Operation
weapons, a
Crimean
resistance
switch-off.
movement would be in the
Power
best position that it's
substations,
been
radar
since the Iranian
systems, oil
Revolution
depots,
to make a
port
move.
infrastructure,
Marines and special
everything
forces
that makes
operatives from
Crimea
the US
functional as a
could tip the
military
scales in
base was
favor
being
of those
systematically
anti-regime
degraded.
revolutionaries. It may sound
The
like an
peninsula
insane
that
scenario,
Russia spent a
but if it
decade
comes to
fortifying
pass,
into its
Iran's
most
leverage in the
important
Strait of
military
Hormuz
hub in the
would
south
disappear,
is now dark,
and the
fuel
country's
rationed,
regime would
and
be
cut
far
off from
behind.
resupply by sea.
And watching from the sidelines is
Here
Russian
is what
President
76
Vladimir
burning
Putin.
tankers in
None
the
of
Sea
this
of
was
Azov
supposed to
actually
happen
means
for
for this
Putin, who had
war,
been using
and why the
Iran to
global
build Russia's
consequences
influence in the
extend
Middle
far
East.
beyond the
But
Black
it
Sea
is,
region.
and the collapse of Iran's regime
Market
would have
analysts
massive
estimate that up to
ramifications
one
for
quarter
the
of
Russian
Russia's
president.
wheat exports
Find
transit
out what
through
those
the Sea of
ramifications
Azov.
are by watching our video.
Reuters
And if
reported
you
that
enjoyed
wheat
this
futures
video,
on the
make sure you're
Euronext
subscribed
exchange
to the
rose as
military
much as
show
4%
so you
on
never
July
miss our
10th,
latest
reaching a
analysis of
6-week
the
high
US moves
amid
in Iran.
concerns over
And thank you
possible
for watching.
disruptions to Russian grain exports. Russia is the world's largest wheat exporter. When the corridor through which that wheat moves closes, even temporarily, even because of a military operation targeting oil tankers rather than grain ships, global food markets react instantly. The same waters that carry Russian fuel to Crimea carry Russian wheat to the world. Ukraine has now demonstrated it can shut those waters down. The economic pressure on the Russian war machine compounds with each passing day the Shadow Fleet cannot sail. Russia introduced a ban on diesel exports as part of a raft of measures to support the domestic fuel market after systematic Ukrainian drone attacks on oil refineries triggered gasoline shortages and price spikes. Russia, one of the world's largest oil producers, is now banning the export of its own diesel to prevent its own population from running out of fuel. That sentence would have been dismissed as impossible impossible in February 2022. It is the reality of July 2026. For Crimea specifically, the situation has reached a point that military analysts describe as strategically decisive. Serhiy Kuzan, chairman of the Ukrainian Security and Cooperation Center, described Ukraine's objective precisely. Our aim is to ensure that Crimea ceases to be a rear base for the entire southern group of Russian forces. The southern group of Russian forces The military formations holding the occupied territories of Zaporizhzhia, Kherson, and the Azov coastline depends on Crimea for logistics, resupply, command and control, and air defense. A Crimea that cannot receive fuel, that operates without reliable electricity, that has lost its sea connection to Russia and its air defense radars to drone strikes is not a rear base. It is a liability. And for the rest of the world, this week's events in the Sea of Azov are a case study in economic warfare that every sanctions designer, every maritime security analyst, and every naval strategist will spend the next decade examining. Western financial sanctions built an elaborate architecture to stop Russian oil revenues. Russia built a fleet of 1,000 vessels to circumvent that architecture. Ukraine sent drones and burned the fleet. The entire 3-year chess match between Western economic pressure and Russian sanctions evasion was resolved in 6 nights by a unit of drone operators flying aircraft that cost a fraction of the vessels they destroyed. Magyar's Bird stated it plainly in their operational summary. A total of 76 vessels were struck over 6 days. The Malashka is doing its job. The shadow fleet that funded this war is shrinking. The Kerch Strait that supplied this war is closed. The peninsula that anchored this war's southern front is running out of fuel. And the drone commander who made all of it happen posted 3 words on Telegram when it was done: Moscow will fall.